I'm gonna ask you a pretty philosophical question here, I guess.
Right.
How much of the work that you do as an analyst would you say is directly related to a concept of coaching? And because I ask you this because is an analyst, in your view, a coach? I guess it depends on what kind of analyst, but is analyst a coach in your perspective? Or does it really just depend on the situation?
It really depends on the type of analyst. Like, there's so many analysts that want to become a coach.
Mm-hmm.
They pretty much like act like they're a coach,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I've seen many like analysts that wants to go that pathway.
Yeah.
And there are ones that wants to just like cherish their role as a facilitator. You're the hub. You provide this for these coaches. You make these coaches like do their jobs better, and you're there to support. And there are analysts that just does like data, just analytics. There's so many more data analysts, especially in America. Like, every team has a data analyst nowadays.
Yeah.
I'm not a true believer of data in football unless it comes to like recruitment or it comes to like physical data or like obviously data helps, but it doesn't tell the whole story.
It's not the ultimate answer, is what you're saying, right?
That's why I believe in all of the and our coaches are fantastic. Like they're really good at what they do, and they're very hardworking coaches, and they want to get involved in this whole analysis side of it.
Right.
So I'm the guy who's a facilitator that helps them figure out, because my philosophy is like, if you have a coach that just sort of wants the analyst to do the work and you go off that, so you've got 6 experts of the game that's been in the game for like 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
You're going to a guy that's probably worked around 5 years.
Yeah.
That's never really been in the locker room, never played the game really, and you're asking for their expert knowledge of the game.
Yeah.
For me, that's like very lazy, Whereas coaches nowadays, every one of them, like Robin coded his own game. Anthony, like he was always like analyzing his games. Darren, he was always analyzing games, and all the coaches that I work with, they all love it. They all love to be a part of it. They spend a lot of time on it, and that's why I'm the guy at the end of the day that once they've done their analysis, I'm the guy that puts it all together.
Yeah,
make it presentable and make sure that like more annotations are done or whatnot to get the most out of everyone, really. So to answer your question, there are analysts that wants to be a coach that and I'm not saying they're a bad analyst, but they're not really a true analyst. And there are more guys like me, like who wants to be the facilitator, and there are other guys that wants to just focus on data.
Right. And Young-hoon, you're somebody who has done a little bit of both as well, from what I know. What's your take on all of this? Like your opinion on this? Do you agree with Jase? Do you have different opinions? Like what's your perspective on this?
Basically, I'm agree with Jase because as you said, I like to say I'm a coach, but also I'm an analyst too. For example, when I worked in Jeonnam Dragons in the 2nd division of Korea, I worked with Fabiano Suarez, who is Spanish Brazilian, and my job, officially my job was interpreter. But he asked me some things that wasn't about interpreter because he knew I'm a coach and he knew what I could do. So I did what he asked me to do. So maybe the job analyst depends on your character, as you said, Jase, but also it depends on the head coach, because if a head coach knows who you are and what capacities do you have, then he can ask you some extra things. For example, in Jeonnam, normally I did analysis of our last game. because I knew how is the model of the game of him. So I made the analysis of our last game, and normally Fabiano made the analysis of our next opponent. So during the week, we made so many meetings, and we discussed about how we can prove our game in our next game. Considering our next opponent, considering the character of our next opponent. Last game, we can be better in this perspective and this perspective. And in our next game, our rival is like this. Our opponent is like this. Maybe we can do it better in this particular way. We discussed about these things. So I'm pretty sure there. So like said Jase, there are so many types of analysts, and also there are so many types of coaches. So maybe it all depends on who the head coach is and who you are as an analyst.
I 100% agree with Owen there. Like, I think coaching has become an art where some can be an analyst type of coach, and some can just be like a free coach where they're there to be friends with players almost, and relate to them, and be respected because you used to be a former footballer.
Are you talking about Jurgen Klinsmann?
That's a head coach. That's a whole different topic. I'm not getting into that debate.
I'm just playing, okay? I'm just joking, everybody.
There's different types of coaches, but in the modern game, I would say even the head coach nowadays knows how to do their own, analysis. Like, it could be basic, it could just be literally time stamping, but it could also, there are head coaches that can do a lot, and there are head coaches that come from analyst background also.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'd like to ask you. You've seen some negative cases because I had a player, and now he has 20 years old in Korea, and now he plays in a university team in Korea. But in youth category, he was with me when he had 13 years old, and later he went to under 15 and under 18 team over some professional teams in Korea. So he has those kind of experiences in professional teams. So, but he said once he had a coach, because the coach had been an analyst in that team, but as an analyst he was good. So the team wants to promote him as a coach, but after being coach, he was not that good, because as an analyst he can solve the game, but as a coach there are some different duties. You have to design the session, you have to know what is the reality, you have to build that reality in trainings. So you have to consider about those things. You have to have those knowledge, but he didn't have. So that player told me, Young-un, I had a coach like him, because and he was an analyst, and as an analyst he was good, but as a coach I was suffering. Whole team was suffering because he didn't understand the dimension of the game, and he made some drills, and we couldn't do it, but he wants us to do that, but we had so many problems, and we were suffering. I'd like to ask you if you've seen some kind of cases like that.
I mean, I think it's really case by case. I really think that coach that used to be analyst that you just described, I think he struggled because he didn't understand the role. So if you've been in the field long enough, I'm sure analysts that's been an analyst at a top level for 10 years or more, they could fill in and do a job in coaching if they're asked to do it. I know it's not their normal role. I'm not saying they're going to be really good at it, but I'm sure they'll be able to do it if they're asked to do it. because they understand the game, they understand how coaches do their stuff, and we're always watching. You can learn just by watching, and a lot of analysts actually get coaching badges as well. Don't get so that analyst that you just described might not have any of those coaching badges, so he might have never had to design sessions and get actually approved from. And coaching badges nowadays is not a joke. It's like an actual degree. Like to get a proper coaching badges, you gotta put in the work, and a lot. All the coaches I work with that go for like A license, pro license, they struggle because like they have to do it within their job.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time and effort. So like that's what I'm saying. Like analysts that just take it for granted and that doesn't have experience, I'm sure they're gonna struggle because they think that they know.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong. 5 years ago, I thought I knew football somewhat. Right? If I look at it now, I'm like, not even close.
Yeah.
Now I think I know some football, but I'm a little bit more modest. But maybe if I'm in this field for 5 years longer, I might have a complete. I'm like, oh, you still don't know it then. This game is a funny game because there's so much permutations that there could be so many ideas that can be embedded into the game, which just makes the game really interesting. There's so many ideas, there's so many different like coaching philosophies out there.
Yeah.
And obviously if you want to just go extreme, like the way Red Bull play, like Salzburg and New York Red Bull, like their way is like focused on one way, and it's a complete different game, but it works. Like I still get result, and other teams that play like Man City, it works. And then you have Simeone, who follows Bielsa's model, which Pep says he does, but play a completely different to Man City. But it just shows you that there's so many different ways of doing it.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong.
There is no right or wrong, and there's no right way, like, to be a coach either. But there is a traditional way, I believe, because that's the way that you get respected. Because if you're a former player, you're just gonna get that respect automatically. It just makes your job so much more easier.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So to answer your question, yeah, I think it does matter in different situations, but again, I think it boils down to how experienced you are and how comfortable you are being in that field.
Let me ask you this, Jase, what do you do to study the game? I mean, obviously you watch a lot of football, you watch a lot of your own team too, but is it like for you, for an analyst like you to study this game inside out, like, is it networking with people in football, or is there like any particular league or team or players that you follow as like your reference? Like, what do you do to study the game of football?
Well, study is a very broad term. I don't think I go sit down, I gotta study this, like an exam coming up. But I think it just comes naturally because I'm watching our game and I'm watching opposition game constantly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And opposition teams do different things. Like even the same team, we play them twice a year. They might play a completely different way. And that just depends on the coaching philosophy or how they want to adapt to the situation and whatnot. And all of those things, like, because I watch it numerous times, that's the way I think I study them, if that makes sense. And if I see something new, even the opposition team does, I would watch most Premier League games because of fantasy football. But like that makes me watch the game, and then I see like Sheffield United doing something completely different. Or obviously I'll watch most Man City and Arsenal games. And then you learn something that they do.
Yeah.
And then because I have a little bit of connection to get the wide angle footage,
right?
We get the wide angle footage from the Arsenal people. And then if there's something that they do differently or interesting, then we watch that game over again. And then we pick out the moments that we think that are interesting and we adapt them to our settings, or at least let the coach know, or coaches themselves look at those games too, because we all get the game together. So that's probably the only really way of studying the game.
Yeah, I find that pretty cool though, that you guys have that networking going on with Arsenal because of that through that connection. That's really fascinating.
It is quite nice.
Yeah.
So Robin went to Arsenal 2 years ago in the off season. So he sat down with Arteta, and I think he was one of the first guys to be allowed into a team meeting.
Nice.
Outside, like, that's how much respect that they gave him, which is really nice. And Robin's fantastic. His ideas of football, like for me, Robin's like football knowledge is like it's like the way how Pep would like to think. So MLS version of Pep. Except we don't have Man City players.
Sure.
It's very difficult to get that out, but at the same time, I've learned so much from him. So if you say how I study it, I learned a lot from the people who are geniuses of the game.
Right. I mean, because it's almost like when I listen to you talk, though, it's almost kind of like, it's your job. I mean, we all work in football, so it's like part of the job too. But it almost kind of like the way you go about like approaching football is, at the heart of it, it's kind of like because you have personal interest in this sport, because you have passion for it. Like that's almost like what it feels like, what it sounds like.
It does.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think it kind of took away a little bit of passion out of it as well.
I'm sure.
I used to be a diehard Arsenal supporter. I don't watch Arsenal games like I used to. So like, you win some, you lose some, I guess.
Yeah. Hey, Younghun, before we jump into the last question here, do you have any other questions for him, or can I just go ahead and wrap up with him? Any other questions for Jase?
I'd like to ask you, what is your main job in your team? Because I'm not sure you guys have the same structure, but normally in Spanish way, maybe you have 2 analysts in your team. One for your last game, like I did with Fabiano, and other one for next to opponent. So maybe they can alternate their duty during the season. But normally European team or Spanish team have each one has their own job for proper purpose. So I'd like to ask you have your job like that or in other way.
Yohan is giving me the most difficult question of the night. So right now we're in process of trying to acquire an assistant for me. So previously I've because of how budget wise and how it's just been designed, I had an intern that helped me out, but it ended up being more work for me than actually helping me out. Because interns, they can only come in for a year, and being an
I'm assuming it was a different intern this time than the one I saw a couple years ago, right? I'm assuming he's no longer there.
I'm not sure. We only had 2 interns, so
the guy. Well, I mean, I'm assuming they're mostly guys.
Yeah, I think it's a different one because the second intern I had became the analyst for our second team.
Oh, okay.
So I'm pretty sure it's a different one. But anyway, it just defeats the purpose of having an analyst intern because we have to promote somebody from Colorado because no one's going to relocate for 15K, right? 12 to 15K.
Yeah.
So, and none of them actually have any experience, So I have to actually pick somebody who's closest to actually having a potential and then train them. And then after a year, I have to find somebody else. So it just doesn't make sense. So I stopped having an intern, and now hopefully I can get an assistant. But our process really is, like I said before, I've managed to facilitate coaches doing the analysis too. So now it just becomes a whole collaborative effort, and I'm the facilitator that puts it all together, and we all do our own work and we collaborate it, and then we show the head coach, show the players and whatnot, and we go on from there. So that's how we do it. And when it comes to opposition analysis, I do it with one of the assistant coaches. So we both look at games, and then we have meetings where we think, oh, this is what he thinks, this is what I think, and we collaborate there as well. And then I come up with a video where he presents to the players. So that's how it works when it comes to opposition. And set piece is the same thing with the goalkeeper coach. He gets involved in all the set pieces. He runs it actually. So he's the one that collaborates with me to show like, this is the type of video that we're going to show on opposition. This is what we did right, what we did wrong, and he presents it. So I'm in that facilitator role. And we're a limited staff, you know, like we're not like Man City where they have got 600, you know. So hopefully it will grow, but we're quite limited at the moment.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because you said goalkeeper coaches also evolves in the process of analysis. Because I until now I didn't have that. I've never worked with a goalkeeper coach that way.
Talking about that before you came in, we were just talking about that. I was like, because Jase is the first guy in football who actually told me that it's the goalkeeper coach who gets involved in coaching, you know, set pieces.
Ah, really?
A lot of teams actually started doing that more, I believe.
Yeah, and then it was you who told me this, and then I went around. It was a few other teams that were doing the same thing, but you were actually the first person who introduced that concept to me. Really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's quite interesting because I've never seen that case.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, goalkeepers need analysis too.
Mm-hmm.
You know that, right?
Yeah.
Well,
No,
you film your goalkeepers and show them what they're doing wrong and what they're doing right. They need reviews as well.
Young one.
Need to field players.
Any other questions for Jase before we wrap up?
Last question, Jason. You're in America. You worked in America, and so maybe we can say you understand that athleticism in America, in football, in basketball, in other sports, and then you know how is the work in a national team. You work in New Zealand national team. So how is the dynamic in work? How is the dynamic in a national team? So maybe it's a little bit silly, but I'd like to ask you, how is your opinion William Klinsmann's job in Korean national team? Because last week when he worked with Korean national team, I heard that he did some tests like shuttle run test and vertical jump test, and he did those kind of tests with his players. But in my point of view, you know, national team don't have much time to train and don't have much time to work together. So, but for example, you as a warm up or to initiate the session, if you do those shuttle run tests, I think that affects the rest of sessions so much because it's not that hard, but also it affects us a little bit. So how Klinsmann, can I say? I'm not gonna do that, but he did
You
that.
wouldn't do that, yeah.
Yeah. How is your personal opinion? As we talked about, there's no right or wrong, but you know how is the national team work, and you know how is the athleticism in America, and I'd like to ask you your opinion.
Like from my personal experience, from the sports scientists that I worked for the New Zealand national team, like our job is to manage. Like we're not gonna make any players more fitter.
Yeah.
In an international setting. So they're coming in from different clubs, and our job is to get them the most freshest and get them injury free before they go back to their club, right? So I don't know what Klinsmann's doing, so I can't really comment on that. But all I know is that you can't really improve the fitness of players that's coming in. Like that's what I believe in. I could be wrong.
Unless it's a special case where you get to
Yeah.
work with players, in a
if you're going
very
into the
special
World
setting.
Cup, it's a different case because then
Yeah.
you get that team for a certain amount of period, and you have to play friendlies before the World Cup begins, and you got to get their fitness to their max just before the World Cup begins. So you need a periodization for that leading into a tournament.
Yeah.
But when it's just coming into the FIFA window, I'm not sure why he would do that personally. But I mean, like, there may be stuff that I don't know about that their sports scientists might think that's a way of injury prevention. So if there is something to do with injury prevention, then I can see why they do it. But personally, I don't know. That's not my department for me to comment on. But that would be why I would think that they are doing it.
Yeah. That's exactly what I said to journalists that gave me those informations.
Mm-hmm.
I just wonder. My opinion is the same as you, so maybe there's something more that we don't know, but
there could be. But like injury prevention wise as well, a lot of it is also mental, and actually there's no right way to prevent injuries. Like every team does their warm up differently, or some people do the wobbly boards and whatnot. Some sports scientists don't like that, and they like to go with the traditional stuff. It's there's no right or wrong. I think there is ways that it works and it doesn't. And if you get less injuries, I guess you're doing the right thing. So
and at last, maybe he can win the Asian Cup, and then.
Oh, I hope so. I hope
it doesn't matter at all, right?
That's what I've actually started this. I want to ultimately get to a level where I can help for the Korean football, at some stage. But right now, I'm enjoying my role in this league that's growing. So I don't see that in the near future, but hopefully one day, if they do think I can help, I'll be happy to jump on that. So
Jase,
wish the best to Jürgen.
Jase, the last question I have, we kind of close with similar questions every time with every single one of our guests, but it's interesting. We've had coaches at different levels. We've had team manager. We've had a team manager. We've had a mental coach. We've had a fitness coach from Korea, and now we have an analyst. What would you say? I mean, I don't kind of like asking it this way, but I guess the only way to ask this is, what would you say is your ultimate goal in football? How do you want to be remembered as somebody who was involved in football, or rather, how would you like to remember your career in football when everything is said and done?
Oh, that's a really deep question.
Yeah, man.
Like I said just now, probably I would want to help my true nation, which I believe is Korea. Although I grew up in New Zealand, I would like to help the Korean Football Association at some point. But probably my foremost goal is to get back to my number one goal of working in Premier League at some stage. That would be a way for me to leave some sort of a legacy, to make me feel proud that I've done a good job to get to the root of where it gave me the passion to enjoy the game. And at one stage I would like to have a chance at it if I could. I don't know if it's anytime soon. Life is tough.
Who knows?
You always have to make life decisions depending on your personal thing that's going on, or money wise and whatnot. But hopefully one day I can have a crack at it. That would be my ultimate goal.
Bro, maybe this winter, man. We'll see. But hey, that was great. Really enjoyed this. I think we went on for about almost 2 hours, not quite. But this was great, man. So thank you so much, Jase. like really appreciate you for taking your time, man. Like I know it's even later than it is here right now, so really appreciate that. Younghoon, thank you for joining in the early hours in Korea. I know we haven't been doing that. It was me doing the early hours here, but that's because my routine and my day just starts at 4 a.m. So I'm like, that's just the way I am. But like I know how tough it could be to do this in the morning. So thanks for taking your time. Jase, thank you, man, and best of luck next season.
I thoroughly enjoyed this, and yeah, well, hopefully next season we start off better. And
yeah, and maybe we do this again after you guys.
I'll be happy to. I like talking about football. I like talking about my experiences. So it's a pleasure, and thanks for having me. Thanks, Younghoon. Nice to meet you today as well. So
thank you, Jase.
Hopefully we can, go offline and start chatting.
No, I'll definitely connect you guys. Whether it's on Instagram or whatever. Yeah. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, thank you so much, Jase. Thank you everybody for listening. That was our episode number 8. 10 is coming up soon. We're only 2 weeks away from 10. So we'll get there in sometime in November, I guess. So yeah, thank you everybody. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
See you later.